Right. Hi there, folks. Welcome back to another special live video interview at WordCamp 2022. I've got a regular member of the panel. I take the mickey out of him. He takes the mickey out of me.
Shag-a-donkey.
Shag-a-donkey.
In person.
Yes, it's the first time. It's the first time we've
Never. I've known you 15 years. This is the first time I've seen you in person.
You're so lucky.
We stood up next to each other, comparable heights.
Yes.
So far, I met Jonathan Wald for the first time in person. He's comparable height. So people look deceptively shorter in person, but I'm afraid that it's like we're all very tall, which is good.
So, Spence, how do you think this WordCamp is going to go, and is anything you hope to get out of it apart from just meeting tossers like me in person?
I'm going to put some names with faces, and I walked around. Jonathan Wald showed me around the place. It's a nice event. It looks interesting, but I'm going to put some names with faces, and I'm all for the social. There's a hurricane coming.
So I heard that.
If we survive the hurricane,
what's this supposed to hit?
You'll be fine. This place is well constructed. It's inland. I'm not going to be spending a lot of time in the event itself or the speakers, but I definitely want to meet a lot of folks. And then I'm going to be doing San Diego socializing.
Are you going to join us tomorrow for the live, or are you going to remotely?
Yes, I will join you for the
I'll
live.
probably do it here,
See
actually.
you at several of the events, including I invited you to an event. Stuff,
yeah,
so.
well, I'll probably do it here, actually, because it's quieter in the morning. They've got a media room, but
as long as I can pull up and park, it'll be fine.
Oh, well, that's all that matters. As long as I can pull up and park.
If not, I'll do it from the balcony of the speech house. If it's still here after the hurricane. Tomorrow is when it's hitting landfall.
Well, I can't stand the heat anyway, so I just live here anyway.
Right.
I feel safe near a table and a computer.
I think in front of a glass window is a good place to be. It'll be fine. 65 mile an hour never hurt anybody. No, but I've seen everybody. Obviously, you can see they're all coming in here, and it's gonna be a good spot.
So, as we discussed during the Friday shows, I think WordPress in general is getting to a reflection point. I sense that it's going to have a very positive future, or it's just gradually going to fade away. What do you sense that? Would you agree with that? And if you do, what do you think are the key factors that will result it moving forward and growing even more, or fading away a bit? Small question.
If something is functional, it will work. If something is controlled by many instead of a singular person, it'll work because it'll just adapt. So the momentum of things adapting is more of a, like, have you ever seen those things? You're in Reno, the pachinko ball machines? They're a game where they just launch all the balls. But anyway, if you
bit on my brain.
If you exactly, two of us. If you had a grid and you dropped enough ping pong balls, the average of a bell curve is what happens. And I think in an open source software, there's lots of long tail this, long tail that, but eventually the thing that people need becomes the reality. And in this case, there's a lot of friction from individuals and things and changes, but I think inevitably drop enough balls, you'll get the bell curve. And I think that's just what happens here, is that it's eventually going to work itself out to be whatever it's going to be. I think that those of us who are proactive find a lot of enjoyment from the fact that there cannot be one person or one thing that moves it and owns it. Because there's a lot of drama lately. Drama. And I love drama, but only insofar as it causes a change, like a catalyst, right? So if you had one of those old-fashioned companies like a Microsoft or a Dell or whatever, there's one leader and everything goes the way that leader wants. Not here, because if enough people speak up, it changes the curve. And that's what I see happening. It's a great tool. Nobody in the real world knows what it is unless they have websites, but for those who use it for websites, it can be just about anything you want it to be.
Well, one of the people I've been interviewing today pointed out that if WordPress hadn't been open source or not in the market, that dominates still quite a bit the web building, over 40% of websites, that he said inevitably it would be just like e-commerce is dominated by Amazon, like Google dominate search, we would just have one monolith company that
Be
would
a SaaS, like Twitter or something.
Yeah.
For example, we talk about on the Tonic show why they can't monetize Twitter, even though it's so obvious how they could monetize it, right? And I think the way that WordPress works is that it's not necessarily the top down that's telling people what to do with it or how to monetize it. It's the third party stuff. But then what happens is the politics collide of the third party interest versus the top down and the .com interfering. And so what I think happens is, I agree that had it been done by a total dictatorship, we'd be sitting here not bothering. We would have moved on to something else. It's only because the third parties had access to the code and can do their own thing that you could just kind of go around the problems. And then that momentum pulls the real product, the core product, back towards wherever it needs to be. I will make a prediction because I've been saying other things like that, but I feel like this is the year that we're going to get back into people building what WordPress should be as a business for everybody, instead of it being this sort of weird hybrid of a.
I've got one question. I was thinking about what I would ask you in person. Don't be too worried. It's totally about WordPress.
This is where online I just press the mute button.
You do. Because you've talked, and I do understand you talked about there needing to be, there's too much duplication of effort, too many plugins doing the same thing, that there needs to be more guidance, more. Like, I think one of your key phrases has been Lego blocks and you bolt the things together, which I do agree with you, because it is very confusing for the average person entering WordPress. 60,000. I don't know how many plugins there are.
64,000.
Right. Duplicate in many sectors like form building, or there's many duplicate plugins. But how do you make that situation better without removing the ability of smaller players to enter the market and a diminish of choice to the end users? Because there seems to be how can you keep that going, or can't you? You just have to accept that there's going to be a lot less opportunity for smaller people.
Well, maybe there's two schools of thought. I'm hosting. I had Anna Radu, who is behind me over here, who works with us she's at Strive Industries. She's with me over at Venture Consulting. She's from Romania, and she's very active in the WooCommerce community. But we were shopping around Chicago. And for anybody who comes from a town in Eastern Europe or Western Europe, they look at a grocery store, and again, modern city maybe, but in a normal small town, maybe there's 2 choices or 3 choices. You go into a Target or a modern American store, there's 900 choices of laundry detergent. And it's a metaphor, because if you think about it with WordPress, the problem is the third parties come in, and because so many foundational things are not finished or fixed, in Gutenberg in particular, there's no choice but to do all of them in a bundle. But in a more mature situation, somebody could curate just one small slice. Like, I can be the expert for this one block, and I can own a very minute audience that's very focused on my thing. Like we used to say in the entrepreneurial space before I was doing all that WordPress stuff, it's better be the company that makes that one $5,000 bolt for a helicopter, that you're the only company in the world that makes it, and anybody who needs that bolt has to buy it from you, than to be the company that makes 5,000 bolts for $1. And so in WordPress, you can definitely have a business where you make a very granular, very specific fix that gets a premium price for those that need it, because the audience of people using WordPress is just getting larger and larger. And there's so many new things that can be done once the pieces start to work together. Again, using Legos or IKEA as a metaphor, those companies are over 50 years old, right? And they just keep getting better and better, newer and newer products, because the existing layer of stuff is always there, and there's new and clever things you can add on to them. And I think that's what I'm thinking of the future of WordPress as being. The core plugins, the core Gutenberg, core whatever is fine. But now people can more granularly improve without having to take on the task of the entire set of stuff in order to just get basic functionality. which, as you and I have talked about a million times, has been the problem with Gutenberg not working for years. It was like everybody who wanted to make something had to make the whole thing over sort of to fix it. Now I don't think that's as...
No, it has, I can, as I put it, see light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Another factor is, just clarify, it was in my brain, it's just left me. What's... Oh,
I was catching it.
Yeah, no. Oh, yeah, that was it. Oh God, it's just left me again. It's let's go off something. It'll come back to me. So, what do you think about the situation? Because you specialise, and a lot of the conversation on Friday have been about WooCommerce. I wrote a little piece. I actually mentioned launch flows in my piece. About the difference between Shopify and WooCommerce, and I haven't actively developed anything for about 4 or 5 years, but the last couple of projects were reasonably large Shopify projects, and I can tell you they turned into a dog's dinner as quickly as WooCommerce was, because I think Shopify, this idea, I think my view was a bit disjointed, because if somebody's approaching a web development agency, they've probably got a slightly more complicated requirement. Because the point I was making in my little piece is I never came across a bog standard Shopify build out.
That's just a myth anyway.
Yeah.
There's I think we talked about this on the last WP-Tonic show, but the myth is that somebody believes that a platform is ready to go beyond the scope of a tricycle. Or, we just went to a lunch at this wonderful cafe, and there was salads and sandwiches pre-made, and then there was a whole menu of stuff that they made from scratch, bespoke. I think it's a fairy tale for any platform to be thought of as having everything you ever needed bespoke, ready to go off the shelf. It doesn't exist. So then the question becomes, is it better to own the software and have it open source, or is it better to have it as a SaaS with an API in order to do things? Now, it's very important for normal people to consider. Shopify sounds so sexy because they believe that, look, I can press a button and it's ready to go.
I think they're very good at their framing and their propaganda.
They're very good at the fact that the features and the benefits are all in an organized, presentable way, whereas WordPress, it's a flea market. But under the hood, it is far, far, far better for all the reasons we've discussed so many times. If you have somebody who's going to help you. In the WordPress space, the person who's going to help you, if they've got the right information, will pick the right pieces that stack together that give you endless possibilities that you own and control. Whereas if you take a SaaS platform, you're always making initially a deal with the devil. Like, I'm buying that ready-made salad because, I think it's terrific. But as soon as you want to modify that salad, you're back to square one, because you got to drive to the grocery store and you got to buy all this stuff anyway. And it would have been better had you just started with planning out the salad and having a professional make it for you than taking what looked like it was, everything I needed, and that last 1% toppled it over. And furthermore, the ownership part. I can't emphasize enough. ClickFunnels, Kartra, Kajabi, Shopify, Wix, Weebly, they look so sexy. But then you will never leave those platforms unless you want to suffer the pain. Because with WordPress, you could host it on, like, Convisio. If you ever wanted to move it to something else, move it over. You can actually move it from different locations.
It's not as easy.
But I'm saying it's transportable.
But you stand some chance of doing it. With these others, you stand that it's really painful.
I don't know if I agree with that, because it's 100% as long as it's just moving from one host to another. Absolutely. Now, sometimes there are things I would agree with you, like if you wanted to go from an Elementor setup to a Gutenberg setup. We've had that actually happen. But at least you have access to the code, and you're not locked in a cage, and you're not building a relationship that you or your client doesn't realize. And I will tell you, as of late, this is where I think the real money lies in WordPress. For somebody who's a client, there's the people who need just enough. And with your help as a freelancer, and that's one of the things I'm doing with Launch Kit and Launch Flows, showing freelancers how you can find a customer that wants a $300 or $500 quick and easy job and just have a TV dinner made on WordPress that you just launch in an hour or less. You can be a professional like I am who specializes in very complex marketing automation and funnels and stuff. And even for them, they very quickly go from like, I don't know what to do to, oh my God, you have all the right answers and now I own it and control it. Versus if they got stuck in Shopify thinking, oh, it'd be so easy, and they got frustrated, because they're equally frustrated once they go outside of the, off the shelf version of stuff. And it's better to start, in my opinion, with presenting people with a realistic, like, let's take what we know WordPress can do, and everybody just make their own menu. This is what my starter thing is. And then the person gets kind of the best of both worlds. They own it, but they also know, oh, look, it's ready to go. Jonathan Dunwood, like your company does. They offer this package for educational or whatever.
So when it comes to WooCommerce, what are one or two things that if they were sorted out in the next 6 to 12 months would really make the experience a lot better?
One of the things I'm excited about is one of my new relationships is with Drew Angel at Angel Eye, who's an example of both the good and the bad of WordPress, because outstanding human being. He focuses on PayPal. PayPal has been a yard sale for so long, but PayPal apparently is having some kind of mea culpa and realizing they can't compete against Stripe. Drew has been a victim of the oppressiveness of the naughty people in WordPress, because the WooCommerce WordPress people,
am I one of those naughty people?
You and I are outcasts and rebels. We are in that same category. But he has actually had people at WooCommerce and WordPress go to PayPal and tell PayPal if they don't smush him that they will lose the business of WooCommerce and stuff like that. Really egregious stuff. And so they took his plugin off the repository, even though
which sounds like the Chicago way of doing business to me.
Bottom line, here's the revenge. The sweet revenge is this. PayPal now has changed their model, and he's in a different relationship with them, which they can't complain about, because obviously that's the part that bothers me personally. It's like, you don't own the world. You have some software. If you don't like somebody's making the software and putting a plugin in your repository, fine. But you can't go to third-party companies and try to interfere with contract. That's tortious breach of contract or interference. The best revenge is PayPal now has an option. We've worked it out because I had otherwise been telling people stay away from PayPal, where for some company that needs or wants to use PayPal, they can have one plugin for free that allows for credit and debit as well as for PayPal with one button to connect. None of the nonsense, none of all the crazy keys and everything you had to do. One button, simple. Best of all, on the credit card charges, for anybody who can be approved, which is most people, it's 2.69% plus I think 40 cents or something per transaction, which is less than the normal 2.9%. And you get this experience with WooCommerce that is just as good or better than Stripe because it just works as a native gateway. So that's one of the things that I think is really revolutionary. Why? Because built into that, one-click checkout, built into that is saved information about the buyer. We used to represent Rally. There's a lot of people in the one-click WooCommerce checkout space. This new product allows somebody with a WooCommerce thing to have a customer who comes in cold turkey, and if they use their PayPal thing once or their credentials with email once, PayPal knows who they are already, and they get one-click checkout. And so it's really exciting because even though launch flows and my products will make the WooCommerce checkout streamlined, you can have a product that literally has a button and it knows who the person is buying it. And that's it. It fills in everything and takes their money. The second thing that I think is exciting is that all of these companies in the WooCommerce space are starting to get the idea that like we need more than Home Depot. So obviously Launch Flows does its part, but like even the other companies making accessories for products and checkouts, they understand now people want to be handed the right thing at the right time versus wandering around inside of a shop. The shop metaphor is old-fashioned, if you ask me. The Home Depot, like you or I used to build houses. I might be able to go in Home Depot and find all the things I need to fix the toilet or build a house, but not likely. I would rather have somebody who comes out in an orange vest and puts what I'm imagining I need into my trunk and it's already paid for. And that's what really is understandable in almost all the SaaS platforms, but it's happening now in a lot of different plugins in WooCommerce. It's not happening from WooCommerce, by the way. Although I will say this, they did make this release. I still don't rely on it, but they made this release to WooCommerce blocks, Gutenberg blocks, that give you some ability to have a streamlined checkout even on your default setup. I don't know if you've seen or played with it. It's
No.
a little janky still, but in other words, it takes away the one size fits all like IRS tax form for a checkout and lets you at least streamline some of the things. But listen, inch by inch. And on the other hand, I'm not saying I want them to go too fast either, because there's the opportunity for myself and other people to take on those clients or customers. So
Right. What? Because governance is a very dry, I think, it's just come back to me what my original, before I stammered, was that governance is a little bit dry, but there seems to be an enormous amount of confusion. It's always been there. It's always just been go with the flow about Automatic, the relationship with WordPress.org, WordPress.com, WordPress.org. It's to me, it's all over the place, and it needs a lot of clarification and simplification. What's your view about that?
I mean, I think we've talked about this, but I would say it's overdue for there to be just a division between what .com does as a business and between .org, because I feel that there's a definitive unfairness to the company that's allegedly running a profit center to be competing both for web agency business, plugin space, e-commerce. In other words, .com holds all the cards politically, indirectly through Matt and the other people over what happens at .org. And yet at the same time, they're competing with not only the plugin authors, the theme authors, but now they're competing with actually the freelancers. And it's just not going to work out that way. I mean, Marie Antoinette let them eat cake, or what have you. Go back to the Roman Senate. When the masses get upset at unfairness, and you don't have full dictatorship, as you don't here, because this is open source, you run the risk of creating a backlash. And I think that backlash is clearly already here. Rob Howard and Master WP and Brian and Aisha and everybody else, I think many of them will be here this weekend. We're all speaking truthfully, and people who care, who make their living from this, don't need or want the drama, but it resonates. The drumbeat is happening.
Well, they want the opposite, don't they? It just shows you how fed up they've got to be to say something.
I'm saying it's like if you figure out where somebody benefits, okay, none of the people who are freelancers benefit from drama, but what they do understand is they benefit from not having a duplicity of competition, from what was supposed to be like this objectively fair, benevolent dictatorship, and it's turned more into a not objective, because you can see where there's a misalignment of goals and financial incentives. And I think that's where it's going to bite Automatic and Matt and the rest of them, because that's what causes people like me to come in and be agitative, not for no purpose, but for a purpose of, this isn't objectively fair. This isn't the situation you've laid out. You're being untruthful. And I think we should shine a light on it so that those who make their living can make a fair choice. Now, truthfully, if you asked most people who own a website, who's Matt Mullenweg, they could give two hoots. What is WordPress exactly? But for the people who are the intermediaries making their living on it, it's relevant in so much as it was one thing when you could choose plugins and you could buy stuff objectively. It's another thing when the actual open source place that is supposed to be, again, protecting the benefit of the community is competing directly for whether it's $500 websites or $5,000 websites, whether it's for this hosting or that hosting, whether it's plug-in this, or they're trying to compete on all levels with all of the freelancers and the makers in the .org, while also saying, hey, contribute your $5 for the future and do this. And the hypocrisy is nuts. It's nuts. I made an argument, by his own logic, .com should be paying people to contribute to
I think this comes to the final question, and we'll wrap up here.
Gotta go get the house before the hurricane.
Exactly. Because I think it was pointed out by a couple of people from WP, Master WP, open source projects live or die by those that actively contribute to them. And contribution seems to have been dying out a bit. People don't seem to want to contribute their time. It's not, and I think that's a big problem. And is that linked to what you just said, really?
Okay, so if you had a bunch of friends get together to paint the garage or paint the fence, the contribution, the 10 friends, you can see who painted which parts of the fence, and you all have a good time, and everybody feels like they made a difference. And if the person hosting the fence painting party is Tom Sawyer and makes you feel like it's fun or gives you pizza or something, even better. That's what WordPress was. It's too big and it's too hypocritical now to allow any rational person to believe that's the case. So if you contribute now to WordPress.org, especially if you're a paying company who has to pay the employees for time, it's like throwing money into a well, because there's no visibility of what you did. There's no real momentum on what you did because the project and the bugs are too large to, and there's and there's a firewall. For example, there have been third-party solutions that should just bolt right into core and then put the label on it like we do for bridges or roads. This is the John Denwood company contribution. That will never fly with the current administration. And that's one of the hypocrisies, because we were talking on the show about how about you take the things that need to be fixed, put them into vertical projects, and allow companies to contribute directly money to that to pay people to actually fix it. Such a simple answer, such a simple solution, and giving credit where credit's due, because then there is a financial alignment. I spent $500,000 for my company, but you know what I got? I fixed WordPress, I let people know what was fixed, and we use whatever was into core for making our business make that money back, because we really needed that fixed. Whether that'll happen or not is to be seen, but I will say that there's absolutely no way the genie's going back in the bottle about pretending that it's back in 2007 again, which was fun when it happened.
Well, yeah, I got a feeling that some of this getting the genie back is, I'm just sensing it, is that there's some voices saying the reason why the genie's escaped us a bit is that we never had the word camps, and if we start doing the word camps, it will get the community spirit back again. And I think they're deluding, because that's not reason why the genie's escaped. The genie's escaped for the things you've just outlined.
In a week from now, there's the Salesforce Dreamforce event, right? Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people converge on San Francisco, and it turns into Mardi Gras. Millions of dollars being spent.
No hurricane, though.
Business being done. I'm saying, this is the lovely venue. 650 people. 43% of the internet runs on WordPress, and it's limited to 650 people. The absurdity of that alone is just hard to understand, because if it was done like a real business, there wouldn't need to be volunteers. There wouldn't need to be people who have to fly across the country on their own dime. It would be paid speakers, paid sponsors, big money, big business, exciting. And it's not a matter of how, it's just a matter of, will the person at the top relinquish control? It's just that simple.
The only thing about that is I totally understand where you're coming from, but I just wouldn't want it to become totally commercialized. I know it's a ridiculous, maybe in some ways a ridiculous.
I mean, it is now, isn't it? What is not? I mean, for example, the software being open source. If somebody wants to use the software, any of the free software, they can just use it. What people are buying is not the software, right? They're buying expertise, they're buying support, they're buying convenience. But at the end of the day, it's like with Legos. I don't know, but there are people who sell Legos on eBay. There are people who teach how to make a 40-foot Santa out of Legos. The Legos themselves you can get on the street at a yard sale. But the knowledge or the help to do those things with the Legos is what people are really wanting to pay for. And I see that's what's really happening. There are so many other software platforms or just other available software that people could use to build anything they want. Python, Drupal. But the reason people like WordPress is because it is a really very simple for people to get a hold of thing, whether to build or to use. It's just the ecosystem is broken right now because there is not the maturity to match the amount of users in the business model. And that's because it's been hamstrung by an immature leadership who, by God, is a great human being, but doesn't have a model that works for all the third-party contributors to actually benefit from growing something. Now, if you look at Salesforce, Mark Benioff did not relinquish control to all the third parties. He made strategic alignments with agencies and other companies who make huge profits from Salesforce having the money in the team and spending the money on the infrastructure to give them the tools they need to sell their clients more advanced things. Whereas in WordPress, it's still like, hey man,
I am puzzled because
make it or don't make it, but we're not going to give you any incentive.
I am puzzled by all this drama because look at Linux, Red Hat, all the other versions of Linux,
right,
and they offer the core for free, but they make fantastic profits on consultancy. And
I can tell you 1,000%, and I've returned to that as part of my conversation. For a lot of the freelancers now are offshore. They're not like Americans sitting in American cities. They're offshore, and they don't have the contacts or the experience or the LinkedIn profile or the audience. And I'm explaining to them how to make money. It's because there are so many people from zero to tens of thousands of dollars a month that need help. There's no shortage of customers. So the whole point is, it's just understanding what somebody can do to solve pain points and build a business around it. But what's sad to me is that we're not making that more visible as an option from the top down, because the only way people find out about that is by digging around and trial and error and going to the flea market, asking questions, making mistakes. If you go to other platforms, like a Salesforce, like Linux, Red Hat, they show you from the top down, here's all the features, this is what it does. And even if it's free to use, you understand there's people available who are experts for these features. Whereas in WordPress, there might be 17 different plugins trying to overlap, and then 14 other things here. And whatever somebody builds might have a different outcome depending on what day of the week it is. And that's confusing, and it causes people to get frustrated, especially with the Gutenberg part of things, especially with the full site editing. There's no other, it's not a SaaS, but there's no other SaaS platform that is
I see where
confusing like this.
Because unfortunately, where it needed more coherence because of all these page, I'm not having a go at them, but it's actually gone. It needed to go in one direction, but for understandable reasons, it's gone exactly the other direction.
If you went to Shopify, you can hire freelancers. They work on a REST API, but Shopify has the core features there available, and it's obvious how to onboard. And as we talked about at the beginning of this, there's a ready-to-use version that might be good enough for most people. WordPress, where's the starting point of WordPress.com exactly? Like, can anybody point? Is there one singular thing? No, it's wherever your ship lands on the moon. And that's what's the problem for many people. And that's one of the things that I personally take a reason to be involved with, is that any other SaaS platform, there's an onboarding experience, there's a specific set of features and benefits, and somebody can rely on that to align their expectations with whatever it costs them. And if they need more help, it's available, but they start with like at least a fundamental understanding. WordPress is still, it's a developer tool being used in a world of non-developers.
All right, we're going to end it there.
Sounds good.
Got my Nick's.
Where's your camera on this thing? Oh, the camera's over there.
Yeah. So
it looks like a donkey.
Donkey. We'll see you in about half hour, folks. Bye.